Brett Hunley. I'm originally from Leavenworth, Kansas. Spent 8 years in the Marine Corps, traveled all over the world. I grew up a Royals fan, grew up watching them, grew up cheering for them, even during the good and bad times. I'm sitting at work, and my boss says he wants to have a meeting with me. So we're sitting there having a meeting, and in walks the camera crew, and they asked me if I wanted to go to the World Series. And here I am. It's surreal. I've never been to the World Series. I've always wanted to go. This is kind of a dream come true for me, especially since the Kansas City Royals are going to win it this year, and I'm going to be here to cheer them on.
All right, thank you for coming, guys. David, thank you for coming.
Thank you. I'm usually behind the camera, so I'm a little nervous. It'd be nice, right?
No need. They don't bite. We're going to have fun. So I got to watch some of the clips beforehand last night, and I was absolutely blown away simply because this is such a cool initiative that I think touches the hearts of so many people around the country. One of the lines that really got me, too, is that life doesn't stop when you exit the military. And I think that that's kind of maybe the gap that you were trying to fill. Someone of your stature when it comes to the film industry and all the success you've had in business, how did this all get started, and how did this process begin for you?
Well, thanks for saying that I had a lot of success, but that's all relative. I'm looking at the age group out there, and probably some of you have seen the movies I made: Beavis and Butthead, Jackass, Varsity Blues, Election, Napoleon Dynamite. So that was my job. For 18 years, I worked at MTV. I did all kinds of cool stuff like those films, or went to Sundance and discovered some incredible talent. And during that time, I really believed that building a brand was something that is the number one thing you can do in entertainment and media. When you create a great film or a great TV show or a great digital series, and you can enhance that brand's reputation by the content that you make, it really makes a difference. So after 11 years of running MTV Films, I started started in the digital world, started doing digital content. And when I left MTV 18 years later, I kind of had this crazy epiphany. I had been sent a music video, of all things. MTV doesn't play music videos, but somebody thought I could get it on MTV. And it was a bunch of veterans who had started their own band, and they had 150 million views on YouTube. And I'm like, how did that happen? How does an unknown band, just of veterans, have that kind of response? And 2 days later, somebody sent me a documentary of 5 severely disabled vets who learned stand-up comedy from famous people like Zach Galifianakis and Louis Black. I'm like, where is the military's media brand? It's a millennial audience. It's really an incredibly passionate group of people who actually have a mission in life. And if I could do something that not only would be entertaining, but actually have a purpose, that would be my ideal job. So that's why I started it.
Mm-hmm. And now, when you were in your days at MTV and in the film industry, did you ever picture yourself starting an initiative like this? So was it something that was ever on your mind earlier in your career?
I honestly can say that I never thought for 1 second about this. And it was one of those things that happens creatively in life when you don't really know it until you see it. One of the things that we talked about a movie like a Napoleon Dynamite, and I'm sitting there at Sundance and watching this crazy film, and you don't know if this is something that people are going to think is the worst thing you've ever seen or the coolest, and you just have to go with your instincts. So in this case, it was like I had this strong feeling that this was a very underserved audience, and one that really needed to have their own brand, to have a voice. And so it just came to me. I decided I'm going to find a lot of people that believe in it too, and give me some money, and start it with my co-founder, Linda Alexander, who also worked at MTV for 27 years. Interesting that both of us saw the world in a similar way when you build a brand for an audience that really is passionate, whether that was music or youth culture.
Right, that's interesting. Now, how do the veterans get involved? And how do they find out about this project? How are you marketing it?
Most important thing, it has to be authentic. So when we raised our first round of money, we hired veterans. So about 70% of our staff are veterans. In fact, most of the content that you see, in fact, all of the videos that you see are directed by veterans. Actually, this year, the first post-9/11 veteran got an Academy Award nomination for a film called Day One. Amazing film. There's this entire generation of creators. In fact, several of our guys are what's called combat camera veterans. They were in the war. They were shooting video and pictures, and that was their job. So there was this kind of understanding of creativity from the people who started at the company, but they're all veterans. So it really required that we start there so that the authenticity and the things that we created could catch on through social media, through digital distribution. We've got, I think, 4 million unique visitors now, which is the largest media brand focused on the military in just over a year.
That's amazing. Congrats.
Thanks.
Well, how different was it, building a business up at a major corporation like an MTV and all the other places you were, as opposed to starting up your own project?
Well, I had the good fortune of being asked to create new divisions at MTV, whether that was the feature film division, which they'd never done before, or a digital group, creative group. So I had the mindset of starting something with nothing. In that case, though, you also had an existing infrastructure. You had a lot of, people behind you and capital behind you. This time it was like, all right, I have nothing. Can I do this? And really the passion that I had for this, I think, trumped everything else. It made me feel like I could go out there and ask people for money and say, I might succeed, I might not, but it's a good thing, and so there's so many charities that are focused on the military, but this would be a for-profit company, but with a strong purpose. So we call it a double bottom line company, and I felt that resonated. So then I raised the money, we built this team, Linda and I, and it's like, okay, now we have to do it. So it just is happening. It's one of those, also an area that people want to support.
Right. What has been the most rewarding part for you from the start of the process till now?
Walking into my office every day. I have this incredible group of veterans that are working there, working hard. We post like 24 times a day. We do about 10 to 12 original posts a day on the editorial side. Then we make videos. We're doing social, and everybody in there is really incredibly passionate about doing this, and they're veterans. So I look in there and I say, this is not your usual entertainment company, which is filled with like a sensibility of competition. It's had a zero-sum game. Somebody's going to win, somebody's going to lose. And here it's like we're doing this together. It's very similar to the military in that, you have a mission, you have a cause, you care about each other, you're going to fight for each other. And that to me is the most rewarding thing I've ever done in my life. Surprisingly, it does not feel that way in entertainment. There's usually people like, how am I going to take advantage? How am I going to stab you in the back?
Yeah, right. You're clearly a content guy. That's where your expertise is. So much about this project is about the interesting stories from these veterans. One of my favorite stories came from a woman who was telling the stories about how she got all the tattoos and what the inspiration was behind those. I thought that was, really, really interesting. What are some of the most interesting stories, or personal favorites of your own?
Well, every day I'm a little surprised of how much you can extend from what you already know. Most people sort of see military and they think the wars, or they think wounded veterans, or they think something along the lines of what the media has already given them. And to me, the most fun thing is, we're doing a cooking show right now. It's like an Anthony Bourdain around the world, and cooking for the military. Whether it's famous chefs who were in the military, or on an aircraft carrier for 5,000 people, but also I have these incredibly talented filmmakers that served. I mentioned Combat Camera. That kind of concept, where you can see firsthand the stories of people who are serving in a capacity like that. The tattoo show is amazing. How do you tell stories through your tattoos? And it's, I think that I'm just always in the discovery mode. I don't know that I have one single favorite. We're working on a project about Bo Bergdahl, very controversial right now. He's the guy who walked off his base in Afghanistan, and there was a serial episode that's happening right now. And so we have the guy who was the combat cameraman, who was the person whose job was to cover the military from that battalion. So it's really firsthand knowledge of what happened when Bergdahl walked off his base. That's a fascinating perspective you rarely see, which is the stories told by the military veterans themselves. Wow. So, yeah.
That's amazing. So, what are some of the brands that you have partnered with, and who are some of the brands that have been helping you out throughout this process?
Yeah, every day we get more brands. It is a startup, but we've been very fortunate. You mentioned Major League Baseball. We've worked with USA, of course. We did a great project with Paramount Pictures. So they had this movie coming out 13 hours, and they needed to fill a stadium. They wanted 15,000 people to show up for the premiere of the film in AT&T Stadium in Dallas. And they came to us a week before, and they said, "Can you help us fill that stadium?" And we put the word out, and 33,000 people showed up. And it was one of those examples of here we were marketing a film that was very relatable, and we were able to use our social media and our influencer culture to get that many people. Probably at least 25,000 of that 33,000 came directly from our site. We brought in 3 Medal of Honor recipients and really did something that it was really at the core of what I'm hoping to do, which is to have an impact while we're actually serving a brand, whether we're doing something fun and original. And we have an animated show. It's called Gunny, and it's a drill sergeant who can't get his mind around having to deal with these idiot civilians. And so he has this vein in his neck that keeps popping out to calm him down. But what's interesting about the show is it's very insider, but at the same time, it sort of somehow deals with issues on its own level. And you always have to remember that. For me at MTV, if you don't give people the Beavis and Butthead and the Jackasses of the world, then they're not going to listen to you when you say get out the vote, rock the vote, or you're doing something like practice safe sex. Very, very important as a brand that every day you're entertaining people. So keep that first and foremost in mind, and then when you have a great message, you put that message in there. Sometimes it's direct, sometimes it's indirect, and that's kind of what we do all the time.
Mm-hmm. Well, you've clearly grown the brand over the last year and a half that you've been around. For you, from a business standpoint, what do you think are some of the milestones that you'll measure success in the coming future?
Well, the continuous effort to get attention and grow your site is great, but really at the end of the day, I keep coming back to this concept of brand, whether that's a TV show that we make or a feature film. And when you see We Are the Mighty, or military loves acronyms, so WATM, then I want people to think about that brand the way people thought about MTV or they think about Disney. These days, Vice is a great brand. So for me, it's about not so much the numbers as it is about the people's perception of that brand and the understanding that that brand means something authentic and meaningful. And it's really, a third of the country is directly related to the military. 130 million people, 24 million veterans and active duty, and another almost over 100 million direct family members. So that's a big audience to tap. That's a big way to create, that's a great way to serve a niche, but it's not in this case a small niche. We call it a mega niche. And so I think we have the opportunity to be in any type of place where we're starting events now, merchandise, platform, OTT platforms, and things that sort of allow you to watch content on an ongoing basis. Each of these things allows us to extend our brand into other areas, and hopefully each time somebody says, well, I love that brand. That reflects what I believe in or what I know. And it's not political. We do nothing around politics. It's very universally sort of appreciated, I think, in this country.
Right. So numbers aside, the business plans aside, overall for you personally, what is the overall goal of this initiative? And, is it a message that you've already conveyed to those involved with the project?
My personal goal, having spent so many years in entertainment, is that the power of that tool, that media tool, is something that I feel responsibility for. So I think that if we can build a great business, because that's an important part for not only our investors, but for survival and the employees and everybody else, but make a difference. We actually did something really unique for a media brand where the West LA VA, 400 acres of property, was being misappropriated for inappropriate uses. And we were called to be the voice of the veteran community, to get from veterans, what do they want in this facility? Do they want recreational facilities, arts facilities, housing? What is it that you want? And surprisingly, using a media brand to not only spread the word that this is happening, but then get input back and then use that directly with the VA. And in this case, helping create a new master plan that was signed off by the Secretary of the VA recently. When you realize the power of your media company to do things that aren't necessarily directly related to just entertainment and a one-off, you realize that it's very exciting. And for me, if we can continue to succeed on that level, that's all I care about.
Speaking of excitement, your past at MTV, being able to scout out certain independent films and pinpointing that, they're a real gem. For instance, Napoleon Dynamite. You went to Sundance, right? You saw the movie and saw something in it. What was that process like, and how did that all begin with Napoleon Dynamite?
Well, it's not directly related to the military, but somehow or another in my brain it might connect. I just think that every year you went to Sundance and you're like, what are we going to see this year? You're going to sit through a lot of bad, boring movies that have a lot of hype. And every once in a while, you sit in a movie theater, and the audience is just like dumbfounded. And you're reading them from sort of both a point of view of of their engagement and their enjoyment with absolutely no knowledge beforehand. And also, like, you're thinking at a marketing level, is this movie marketable? Can we possibly make this work? And we just, like I said before, I went with the gut. And actually, we didn't get the film. To be honest, I was at Paramount. That's where MTV was based. And they didn't really want the film. So Fox Searchlight bought the film, and I went up to the head of Fox Searchlight and said, we love this film too, can we partner on that? And so what happened was the Fox bought the film and then brought us into it. So we did all those crazy marketing campaigns. You had Vote for Pedro, you had Napoleon Dynamite on TRL. We did all of these crazy little insidious things to make it something that people would embrace before the movie came out. And then when the movie came out, it became this cult thing. It really wasn't like we're opening it on 5,000 screens and everybody's gonna go see it. It required that people kind of convince you that this was weird, but fun. And it's interesting how iconic that is. Similar to another movie I made, which we actually made, which is called Pootie Tang. Don't forget that. It always gets a laugh. Louis C.K.'s first one and only feature film he wrote and directed. But sometimes you develop these films and you don't know what you're going to get, and you go for something that's absurd and nuts, and it doesn't always work. So in that case, but the talent was clearly there, with Louis.
Now, one more question before we hand it over to our audience. How can we get involved with this great initiative, and where can we find this content to consume every day?
Absolutely. Well, thanks for that plug. WeAreTheMighty.com, and we have all the social stuff that you need, and I just love the fact that civilians as well as the military community is starting to recognize that this is incredibly interesting and not always expected community. And I think that if you watch some of our stuff, you'll be surprised, like, I didn't know that about the military, or that's something that I really can appreciate. I don't know how many people in the audience have people in their families that served in the military, but it's a surprising number. I mean, not as much in New York maybe, but pretty much everywhere else in the country. And so I think it resonates, and just check it out everywhere we are. We'll soon hopefully be on TV and in features. I mean, last year, American Sniper was the biggest movie of the year by far. So there's a really great potential in all different areas. So check out anywhere you can see We Are the Mighty, and we'd really appreciate it.
Yeah, well, we definitely will. We have any questions from the audience?
Hi, thanks for being here. I'm extremely impressed with your background, and thank you for contributing to the military. So growing up, did you have any particular favorite military movies or TV shows that you just loved, or?
Yeah, MASH was a show that I think to this very day has never been repeated in terms of the sort of humor, but also the seriousness of the subject matter. I'm really also, when I was at movies like Platoon, and I grew up in an age when the military was not appreciated in the same way. You saw a lot of post-Vietnam War movies, and I think it really had an impact, not necessarily a positive impact on how Americans perceive the military. And now that I look back and I realize these were 18, 19, 20-year-olds who were drafted into a war, and they came back and they weren't appreciated in the same way that I feel like we appreciate our military now. But I look back and realize how important the movies that I saw at that time really impacted how I felt. We had Hogan's Heroes too, and F Troop, like comedies, which we haven't seen that yet, but I'm really feeling that we have a moment now post 9/11. We're calling it the Generation M in a way, because if you've been around since 2001, you really have an association with the military, and we've seen a lot of stuff. But those were a couple of the things that I remember. But really wasn't until recently that I started to think about it, like whether I had an influence or not. I don't think it was a positive influence all the time.
Hey David, thanks for coming. I was wondering, when you were hiring the veterans for your network, did you find a lot of them were coming from entertainment positions, or you really offered them an unprecedented opportunity to work in this industry?
I love that question. You know why I love that question is because that's a problem. That if you want to get into the entertainment business, then usually you come right out of college. Maybe some of you went to NYU film school or another film school, and the first thing you do is get a job on somebody's desk, being an assistant, getting them water, doing all that kind of stuff, and you're 21 years old, and then maybe at 30 you might get a job that you feel like is worthy of all your talent. In the military, most of the time, you've been serving in the military till you're 30, maybe older. And these people have creative ideas, and some of them have done some things related to the military, like the guys who did combat camera. But at the end of the day, they don't have that direct skill set. But what they do have is an incredible amount of real life experiences, leadership. And so I have found that everybody we have hired has this ability to transfer the skills that they have had in the military into doing entertainment and media, things that they're passionate about. So the answer is, most of them don't have as much experience, especially at the age they're at, but they actually exceed most people that I know who've served in the entertainment business and really don't have that same kind of ethos. They don't have that passion about what they're doing. I've never experienced anything like it. I'm not just saying that, but in all the years I was in entertainment, I never met one person who was at a high level within the studios or the networks who had served in the military. And that's kind of got to change. So.
Hello, thank you so much for being here. So We Are the Mighty seems like a very entertaining and fun way that the military men are expressing their stories, but there is a dark side, I know you know, for the veterans and the military. So I wanted to know if that's something in the future that you want to explore.
Well, we explore it every day. Actually, you'll see a fun and light side of what we do all the time, but we're dealing with serious issues here. What I don't want to do is create further stigma and stereotypes, so that when you see a wounded veteran, whether it's PTSD or whether they're dealing with a disability, that's one story, but often you'll see another side of them. So what we're trying to do is really use our platform to make sure that people know, I use the phrase, when you've met one veteran, you've met one veteran, because every story is different. So there are very dark stories. The War Inc. series, which you should check out, has many difficult stories expressed through people's tattoos. Every one of them has been through something personal. And so when we're doing things about the homeless problem, so when we were working on this VA project, we really had to address that. Maybe it wasn't directly online, but other times it will be. So the movies, the TV shows, the things that we'll do will absolutely have to address these issues. They're super important. And I think we have the position to make a difference. But like I said, if all you did was tell people the dark, difficult stories, that they probably will tune you out. So we liked it to be a mix. But yes, we do already tell these stories, and we will continue to.
Hi, David. Thank you for being here. I was just wondering, do you have any other passion projects or causes that you'd like to support?
Personally, for 22 years, I've run a charity called Hollywood Heart. It's a camp for kids affected by HIV and AIDS, and arts program for at-risk youth in high schools. So I've been doing that since the AIDS epidemic started, and we have a great camp in Malibu, and that's one of the many things that I care about. Most of us, I can look at this audience and see they're pretty young, and you're getting started in your careers, and I think if you don't do something sort of that you feel like can make a difference in the world, even if you're enjoying your job, then it's really a waste of your talent. And so I used my experience in entertainment to start this camp, and that's another area that I love.
Cool. All right. Well, David, thank you so much for coming. We really appreciate you stopping by. Everyone go check out We Are the Mighty.